Welcome. Take It Up with Jessica Lee. I'm here with Carlos Quezada, who is the head of customer success at Aruba, an HPE company. Carlos, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Now, you're in charge of customer success, which is a big deal nowadays. But Aruba actually has been known as an on-prem solution provider. And customer success is very much for that subscription renewal model of business to the cloud. Mm-hmm. Tell us about that, the transition, where it started and how you got involved to build up this team.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for that. So you're right. So Aruba historically has been known for the on-prem, products. And how I got started in customer success. So my background's been in services support, been doing it for over 20 years. I've worked at different size companies. Recently, before Aruba, worked at a startup, running the solutions delivery team. And as I was running the team, I realized that a lot of the motions that we were driving as part of the solutions delivery was really understanding what the customer was looking for, and continually engaging the customer to make sure that we're delivering, value for the customer and making sure that they were actually adopting and using the solutions that we're delivering. And it quickly hit me that a lot of the functions and a lot of the activities that we're driving actually had a science behind it, and are known as customer success activities. So that really kind of got me to double click on understanding a little bit more about the science of customer success, and quickly adopted a lot of the methodologies, and by virtue of that, actually created a customer success function, and I was a VP of customer success for that company. Mm-hmm. After joining Aruba, I'm part of the global services organization, been at Aruba for a couple of years. It became very apparent that the company was going through a digital transformation like most companies are. And we were starting to offer more subscription-based solutions, more SaaS-based solutions to the customers. And we had a traditional support model, but we really didn't have that proactive engagement for those subscription customers, just to make sure that customers were, one, actually using the subscriptions that they purchased, and second, actually getting the full value out of them. And so as part of that view, we actually started a pilot about 8 months ago to really go after our cloud subscription business and really kick off customer success motions for the existing install base of cloud, as well as any new customers coming on board. So right now, Aruba is going through that transformation, as many companies are, and the number of products that we're releasing with that cloud connectivity is continually increasing.
So you have about 4,000 customers, mainly SMB clients. They bought the hardware, mm-hmm. which is a network access point.
That's correct.
And there's a lot of management software involved
mm-hmm.
in that, right? Security and all that. So that's the subscription part.
Yes.
But it's a 1 year, 3 year, and 5 year subscription.
That's correct.
So it's very interesting that I think a lot of the audience who might be in their company journey also mm-hmm. from hardware on-prem to the cloud are interested in hearing about your story.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think, so when we first kicked off the CS journey, one of the things that we did is spend about 2 months interviewing other companies that are doing customer success, understanding how they do it, and really understanding how we were going to go and structure the team. And to your point, I felt that we were somewhat unique in a couple of ways. The combination of hardware versus software was mm-hmm. one, and then also kind of our partner engagement model, right? We're nearly 100% partner driven as far as the sales cycles are concerned, and so we had to take all that into account and make sure that the CS solution that we were building came off as an augmentation to the existing resources that existed, like the channel, and actually a supportive role to that, as opposed to anything that would somewhat compete with what they're doing. But yeah, absolutely, I think that some of the things that stood out for us were, how do we go in and add value to these on-prem customers who are used to kind of more of that on-prem service, and now get them onboarded into having this proactive engagement with the CS rep, understanding what value we're going to add, and just making sure that customers are actually responsive to a lot of the engagements that we're doing. So that was something that we spent a while just kind of perfecting, I would say.
So to improve anything, first you have to assess your current situation, yes. right? To be able to measure where you are now.
Absolutely.
Talk to us about the measurement of churn rates.
Sure.
How you have to segment different groups and then have different rates.
Yeah, that's a good thing. So when we started, with anybody else doing customer success, step one is really understanding your install base. And the second piece is you do your customer segmentation. And customer segmentation and customer success really results in what your delivery model is going to be. So once you understand your customer, you understand, maybe what tier the customer falls in, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and those are usually mapped into what we call kind of high touch, medium touch, and tech touch engagements. But at the end of the day, one of the key decisions that you have to do as a CS leader is what's the goal of the customer success team? Is this customer success team going to be a land and expand team that's going to go and drive upsell and cross-sell? And in that situations, you expect that the CS team is usually under a sales umbrella. Or is this customer success team focused on adoption, value realization, customer sat, which is the situation that we found ourselves into. And what we found when we did our research is that when you're in that kind of latter scenario, the customer success team is typically under the services umbrella. What we ended up uncovering is that when we're trying to understand, well, what's the problem that we're going after, right? We want to go in, and we knew we had a renewals problem just because customers had been unattended for so long that we were, customers were renewing, because they'd adopted the product or they'd purchased the hardware, but we didn't know that they were getting the full value. So when we actually started understanding the install base, one of the things that we found is that we couldn't just go in and create a high-level churn metric because there was some complexity in the data there. So what we found is we actually separated two customer types. One customer type was customers that actually purchased a subscription, who had actually adopted the product and were actually using their product. And then we had a second segment of customers who, in some cases, were multi-year customers, and by virtue of either promotional items or whatever, had actually acquired these subscriptions but hadn't started consuming them yet. So what we did is we actually split the churn metric because we have to attack those differently. So as you're driving CS motions, you always have to ask yourself, what's the result I'm trying to drive? So in the first example, for customers that had actually installed the licenses or subscriptions and have been using the subscriptions, we were tracking that churn metric, one way. And then we also are considering those customers that haven't activated their licenses. You can pretty much guarantee that the churn is going to be 100% unless you get them to start adopting the product. So internally, what we're doing is we're tracking both numbers, and we're driving different campaigns against each. So there's a very specific targeted campaign, what we kind of call on-ramping, which is existing customers who have licenses. Let's go in and make sure that they go in and onboard onto those licenses and accelerate the time to value for those, while also driving proactive success motions for the existing customers to also help mitigate the churn risk.
Okay. So as you're going about trying to achieve all this, what are some of the challenges that you're facing? How are you addressing them?
So some of the challenges, right? So one of the things that I've heard a lot from many of my customer success colleagues is that, getting the rest of the organization on board with what you're doing is always a challenge. And in that sense, I feel somewhat fortunate. So Aruba, like I mentioned earlier, we are going through kind of this digital transformation. More and more products are going to the cloud. And because of that, I would say cross-functionally folks are a lot more receptive and almost expecting that this exists. And so as we're working with those other cross-functional teams, we're getting a lot of support. But I would say some of the challenges were, getting the right level of telemetry to tell us what the customers are doing, getting the channel educated on the purpose of the success motion and how we play together. Getting folks like the inside sales team aligned with, being able to have those very fluid processes from an engagement from customer success. If an opportunity happens, how do we bring that over and get that in the lead funnel for the sales? So I would say some of the biggest challenges have just been you don't know what you don't know. One of the things that we learned very quickly was having this waterfall approach to planning wasn't going to work for us because we were trying to boil the ocean. We were trying to anticipate all the different pitfalls and all the different processes that we need to develop. And we quickly realized that if we sat there and documented and processed all these, we were never going to get started. So we actually shifted, and one of the things that we did, which has been working really well for us, is we actually adopted the agile development model, which a lot of software companies use. And what we've done is we've leveraged that methodology to really help us go and understand, for the existing cohort that we're managing, what are all the processes that we have to develop? We've created a backlog. We have Scrum ceremonies where we talk about when are we going to release, what campaign's going to release in the next couple of weeks. So we do have a sense of sprints and releases that really help us stay in front of the existing cohort that we're managing. So as an example, we kicked off a campaign for all net new customers starting January 1st going forward. And we're, as they're going through their customer success journeys, what we're doing is we're developing the processes that are coming up 1 or 2 steps ahead of them. So as they get to that threshold, those processes have been developed, and they seamlessly kind of get onto that flow. So that's been very, very helpful for us.
You talk about educating the partners, and I sense that there might be some conflict that's going on between what you're trying to do and what maybe the partners are perceiving incorrectly.
Right. Yeah. So, Aruba has a very, very great partner culture from day one, right? It's all about the partners. And so one of the things that we have to be sensitive about is that anything that we do, we need to do with the partner in tow. Now, it becomes more and more difficult when you start working in the SMB environment or even the mid-market environment because, when you take a look at the volumes that some of these customers are driving, the partner may not necessarily have the cycles to have that intimate relationship with the customer. So by virtue of some of the campaigns that we're driving, we have a lot of digital engagements, which means we're touching the customer directly. As an example, if, with machine learning and AI today, we can quickly understand how long a customer is sitting on a UI, how long they're, what page they're on, what are they clicking on, what are they trying to do. And we can quickly engage the customer and saying, hey, it seems like you're trying to do this. Here's a document or here's a tip on how to do that. Well, now you just went completely directly around the partner, right?
Yes.
Usually the customer would call the partner and say, hey, I'm trying to set up guest access. How do I do that? If I can proactively get to the customer and help them do that, then I've accelerated their value. But at the same time, the partner has now been kind of sidestepped. So it's important for us to make sure that the partners understand that we're doing this not to necessarily sidestep them, but to really get their customers to be more successful quicker. And they can choose to engage or allow us to help drive. So in the initial phases, we're doing a lot of this automation directly to the customer. But as we start getting closer to the end of the cycle, and we're doing more renewals and things like that, we're absolutely considering the partners as part of that. So partners will still get comped on the renewal, even though we've been doing a lot of lifecycle management. And then, there's also this concept of different tiers for partners as well. So, we're exploring the idea of actually, for certain tiers of customers, really educating, training, and enable them to also be able to participate as part of the CS functions as well. So one example of that is any of the telemetry data that we get that helps us understand the current status of the customer. Is the customer red, yellow, or green? Our goal is to feed some of that information into the partners' ecosystem so that they can take action on some of these things as well. And even more importantly, if the partner is going to go visit a customer, having visibility of what we think the customer's current state is super critical for them. So those are some of the things that we will be doing to help enable the customer. But I would say initially, it's all about over communicating and educating the partner community that this is actually a good thing, and they will be part of this ecosystem as well.
Yeah, I mean, I can see the initial sense of discomfort from the partner, but if they're getting comp on it, and you're helping the client to be happier, then they're more likely to continue the business. So that's good for everybody.
Exactly, and I think it's also important to say that we are very North America focused right now because that's where the majority of the install base is. And being in the industry as long as I have, I recognize that the relationship between customer and partner and folk in places like EMEA and APAC is even tighter. And so we will have to develop a different engagement model for those markets as we accelerate some of these programs. So we are working pretty closely with the channel team for APAC and EMEA to make sure that we understand what that engagement model shift needs to be to still be able to drive some of these things.
Okay, so you actually have to have some kind of tool to create the content and measure and track everything, and then using machine learning to automatically maybe suggest content.
Yes. So that's a good point. So For us, we knew that we were going to be digital heavy out of the gate. Again, because we are focusing on SMB and mid-market, we are doing some enterprise, but the majority of the install base is SMB and mid-market. And so when you take a look at our hiring strategy very early, it was all about data, right? So my first hire was a customer success operations manager, which is in charge of setting up Strike Deck, which is our customer success platform, and getting the right data sources in a Strike Deck to be able to automate the understanding of customer health, and then to drive some of those digital campaigns. The second hire was a program manager to really help us drive a lot of these processes and programs into the digital engagement model.
Excellent. So what's exciting ahead for you?
I think it's the scale part. So the way that we've been driving this is we go and we kind of develop and plan, then we incubate, and then once we incubate, then we do a pilot, and then we scale. So right now, like I said, we're at the point now where we've left incubation. We're into some of the install base already. Now it's how can we go and take this framework and scale. So for us next is we're actually going to go into the other geos as well. But more importantly, we're also going to start taking on additional products. So now that we have the framework for CS, we have the tools set up, we know how to calculate customer health. Now it's, we're ramping up the customer success manager activity. So we have, we have additional CSMs hired to go and actually reach out to those top tier customers.
You have 7.
7.
You're going to go up to maybe 15.
We'll have 15 by the end of the year.
So you're hiring.
Yes, we're hiring. And then also we're expanding product lines. So we're not only going to be doing Aruba Central, but some of the subsequent products that will also be cloud enabled. We're actually kicking off those pilots here in the next month or so.
And of those 4,000 customers, you're like a quarter into.
Yeah. So I would say for the product base that we're going after right now, the short term addressable market is about 4,000 customers. We're over 1,000 customers in as far as engagement. So with purely digital and the limited number of resources that we have, we've been able to touch over 1,000 of those customers. We're interacting with them, we've onboarded them, and we're tracking them to the journey. Now what we're doing is we're taking the remaining customers who are existing customers, and we have what we call an on-ramp program to slowly kind of acclimate them into the CS program.
Okay, excellent. Exciting stuff ahead.
Yes, very exciting.
Thank you so much, Carlos, for coming on and sharing your thoughts with us.
Thanks for having me.
There you have it, folks. Take it up with Jessica Lee, Carlos Quezada from Aruba.